back to the Morgan Ortagus Show. I'm in the Senate, and I am interviewing Senator Cynthia Lummis from the great state of Wyoming, one of my favorite states to visit. I absolutely love it. You're going to hear a really detailed conversation, a deep policy conversation. We're going to go all around the world. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. I'm very excited to have with me someone who is a leader in the Senate, someone who so many women in Washington, especially conservative women, look up to. Senator from Wyoming, Senator Lummis. Thank you so much for being on the Morgan Ortagus Show. There's so much that I want to talk to you about today because you're an expert and a leader on national security issues in the Senate. We were just having a quick conversation about energy security and about how it is our national security. Can you give us your thoughts, especially given the state that you come from, such an energy abundant state as well? Why is energy security national security?
Well, Morgan, Wyoming produces a tremendous amount of coal and natural gas. We're the largest coal producing state in the nation. And we're very big into natural gas as well. Natural gas and coal together make up about 60% of this nation's electricity. And yet we have an administration that is trying to stop coal energy and natural gas energy, while at the same time promoting electric vehicles, which require more electricity. And they're also in favor of artificial intelligence, which requires more electricity. We are cutting off our nose to spite our face if we produce less energy and expect to consume more energy. In addition to that, Morgan, as a geopolitical ally, we need to provide our energy as an alternative to countries that currently are reliant on China for their energy. It is a national security issue and an important geopolitical issue. For example, I recently was in Japan and Korea. We saw the air in Seoul, South Korea. I asked why their air quality was so bad. It was burning our eyes. We could see it. You know, it was impairing the visibility around town. And they said, we looked to what China's air quality is or was 48 hours ago, and that's going to be our air quality 48 hours hence because of the wind currents. This air quality is so bad because Chinese coal is burned in such a dirty manner. We would be doing those countries a service if we would provide them with our energy. And it allows them to set themselves free from dependence on China.
Right. You know, this makes me think in the Trump administration, when we pursued the maximum economic pressure campaign against Iran, I always remind people the price of oil didn't go up. Why is that? Even though we had effectively taken Iranian oil off the market, because we were exporting and unleashing American energy. And it's so interesting to me. One of the things that you said that just to follow up on that, you talked about all of these new technology advancements like AIs and electric vehicles and others, and how it requires so much energy, electricity. My understanding is, and you're an expert on cryptocurrency, that also it requires a lot of, to mine these Bitcoins and to go through this whole process also requires a lot of energy. Is that accurate?
It is. Cloud computing as well. Right. These are big energy consumers. What we're finding with Bitcoin is because it can go to the source of the energy, it doesn't have to be mined distant from the source of the energy. You can take a Bitcoin mining rig, set it right next to an oil and gas well that's not yet hooked up to a pipeline, and you can mine for Bitcoin off the vented gas that's coming off an oil well. That is a way to prevent gas from being vented into the atmosphere. So that is actually an environmental benefit. And that's happening right now in Wyoming. That's not some future idea.
That's so cool.
It's very cool. It also allows for the balance of base load. So base load energy is that amount of energy that is required 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some entities need to produce more energy than that for those times of day when more energy is consumed. And so Bitcoin mining operations can say, we will curtail our use during high demand areas for air conditioners in hot climates, heat and cold climates. We'll curtail during peak demand hours. And then when you're producing excess energy, we'll ramp back up. So it smooths out base load energy and ends up being a benefit for utilities. They don't have instances where they're producing more energy for 5 hours than they need, and then it reverses itself. This is smooths it out.
This is fascinating. I didn't know this. You know, staying on the cryptocurrency beat again, because you're one of the leaders in the Senate on this, there's a lot of concerns about the national security implications behind cryptocurrency. But at the same time, we know we have to allow for innovation here in the United States. You can't stifle things, or the Chinese Communist Party is just going to dominate the space. So how do you balance those issues as a senator who's leading on these issues, allowing for innovation with cryptocurrency, but also dealing with the national security threats?
Yeah, well, I might point out, first of all, China does not allow individuals within their country to mine or hold Bitcoin. But the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, holds the second most Bitcoin itself of any country on earth.
Wow.
So they recognize that it is a durable store of value. So they keep it for themselves and prevent their citizens from using it, because they want to steer their citizens towards a digital yuan, which is a central bank digital currency, which allows the government to surveil their own people. The great thing about Bitcoin and other digital assets is they prevent that kind of government surveillance of citizens. Also on the security front, there are companies like Chainalysis in the United States that have testified before Congress that it's easier to solve a crime that is committed using Bitcoin or another digital asset than using a fiat currency like the US dollar. So that seems to be an argument that is an inconvenient truth that many ignore.
That's fascinating. Wow. You know, I'm sticking on the national security beat. We are rapidly approaching almost the mark of almost 10 million illegal immigrants who have entered this country under the Biden administration, where we have a porous, open, undefended border. Now listen, I'm not the math expert, I do have an MBA. That's more than the size of Wyoming, of your state. I think like 17% more. So how did we get to this place? We saw that just last week, the Biden administration, of course, put in some election year things, you know, to try and toughen the border. But then at the same time, we see that they're catching people from ISIS Khorasan that has entered the country. How do people in your state of Wyoming view this border issue?
You know, this issue and inflation are the number one and number two issues in Wyoming, and they are in most states. We've had over 10 million illegals come into our country since Joe Biden became president. Now, my state's population is between 500,000 and 600,000. So that's an enormous increase over my whole state.
Wow, it's crazy.
The worst problem for Wyoming with regard to this, though, is in the drug front, because these people are bringing in child labor, and they're bringing in illegal drugs. In my state, it's easier to hide the drugs than the children. So they tend to take the children they're trafficking to larger cities and send the drugs all over the country, including to Indian reservations, not just in Wyoming, but in South Dakota, in Arizona, in Montana, and it is a massive problem. Addiction is running rampant, demand for these drugs is increasing, and the crimes that result from the need for more money for more drugs are frightening. So this is a huge impact on not only the states that are directly adjacent to our southern border, but to other states like Wyoming. Now every state is a border state.
Right.
This is a huge issue. And when you see Governor Abbott in Texas say that the window dressing that occurred when Joe Biden passed this faux executive order is just that. It has had no impact, positive or negative. Nothing has changed. But as you pointed out, Morgan, then we're seeing people that are ISIS affiliates being caught when they cross the border. So how many more came here that weren't caught? We know that about 250 people have come in that are on the terror watch list. How many got here without being detected? It's absolutely terrifying.
The smartest ones got here without being detected.
There you go. And our agencies in government that are watching potential for terrorism activities in the U.S. are very concerned. There's a heightened level of concern about another terrorist attack a la 9/11 occurring because we let these people in undetected.
It's crazy. The blinking red lights is what the FBI director keeps saying. You know, just to quickly, I feel like we're going around the world with, this should be a show, Around the World with Cynthia Lummis. The House very recently passed bipartisan sanctions against the ICC, the International Criminal Court, for going after Netanyahu and the defense minister in Israel. In the Trump administration at the State Department, we sanctioned the ICC for trying to go after American troops. What I'm hearing publicly is that Senate Democrats are going to hold this legislation up, and not allow you guys to vote on bipartisan ICC sanctions. Anything new on this for us?
You know, I haven't heard anything new.
Okay.
The ICC's behavior, based on what Israel has dealt with, is inexplicable and dangerous.
That's right.
So here we have Israel on October 7th that experienced the loss of over 1,200 people, all the hostages taken, the brutality of it. It just shocks the conscience. And to think that they couldn't respond, or the world is asking them respond with one hand tied behind your back,
Right.
is unreasonable. So then to add insult to injury, we have this International Criminal Court saying that Prime Minister Netanyahu should be prosecuted for this. It's so unfathomable, Morgan, that I don't know why there isn't a bipartisan American response that says we stand with Israel. They were attacked. Did we run all over the world after Osama bin Laden took down our towers and bombed the Pentagon and sunk an airplane into the ground in Pennsylvania? Did we say, oh, we're going to fight this war with one hand behind our back? No, we asked people to join us. So what the Biden administration is doing in turning a blind eye to the international court that is behaving, in my view, extremely irresponsibly, is another slap in the face.
I totally agree. Listen, thank you so much for the serious and the substantive conversation, but also your leadership in the Senate on these issues. You know, as a Republican woman, I'm so proud to have you representing us. I do have to end on something funny, though. You know, you're a cattle rancher from Wyoming, lifelong. I know you grew up that way. How do you feel about, you know, with the rise of Yellowstone and all the TV shows, now everybody wants to be a country singer and everybody wants to be a rancher. How do you feel about America turning country?
You know, I say, in the words of a country song, the world's gone country. It's healthy because the values of rural America, the American West, valor, you know, the code of the West, virtue, knowing right from wrong, common sense, those are all timeless American values. And to give rise and give platform in the 21st century to those values, the right of people to be good stewards of their own land and not be told by outsiders that there's another use that somebody else wants to have, the greed quotient. These are virtuous discussions. So I love it. And I know that Yellowstone drops a lot of F-bombs and there's a lot of murder and it can have its crude moments. But the underlying core values of land stewardship and a respect for treating each other admirably as neighbors, those values are timeless. So I'm loving it.
That's really funny. Well, I mean, listen, I travel the world, lived all over the world. I always say when I'm traveling internationally or when I'm talking to new ambassadors here in DC, I say you cannot understand America until you visit the American West. And once you visit the American West, you will understand Americans. So listen, thank you so much, Senator Cynthia Lummis, for being on the Morgan Ortagus Show from an amazing state, one of my favorite states. I love, maybe I'll end up being a cowboy moving to Wyoming one of these days, or a cowgirl, I guess.
You are so welcome, Morgan, anytime.
My daughter rides horses, so we live in Tennessee, so she would be a big fan of moving to Jackson Hole or something like that.
Well, I think there are more horses in Tennessee and Kentucky.
There might be. Well, thank you so much, Senator. We appreciate you being on the Morgan Ortagus Show. Thanks so much for listening to another edition of the Morgan Ortagus Show. I hope you enjoyed this interview. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a read, tweet, or whatever. We're so glad that you watch and listen. Thank you.